The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back. New York City baseball in the zone. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. We got the Mets edition today and the two Met mavens, Marty Rose and Robert Kohler here. Start with you, Robert. How are you?
Doing good, ma'am. Yeah, I guess I don't even know where I am. Doing good, Ralph.
Okay. Well, boy, I don't know if I channeled that through the phone lines, but that could you could have a contact high. Marty.
Yes.
Just relax and enjoy it, Robert. It won't kill you. Marty, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Enjoying summertime in January.
Oh, that's the way it is in Florida.
80s here. 80s.
Nice.
Even here.
But still, in the winter, I remember once my first year or so in California. I live, for those of you listening, if it matters, I live in Northern California, stationed out here in Northern California in the Air Force years ago. Took a trip to L.A., and it was Christmas Day, and it was 80-something degrees. And I thought to myself, I doubt very seriously if I'll ever be living in New York again. Still be a Met fan.
Exactly.
But it was not where I was going to put down roots for the weather. Florida, California, it's so much better than New York climate-wise. But, again, nothing's perfect. We have the threat of earthquakes, the realization that there is going to be constant fires given climate change and this, that, and the other thing. And Florida, you get hurricanes and Floridians, native Floridians. That's as hazardous
floods,
as anything else.
Floods on the coast too. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Rising waters and whatnot. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, nothing is perfect, and by the same token, Minnesota. What's the temperature there? I was looking at it was minus 30 or something the other day, without exaggerating. It's crazy, and I'm sure the ecological situation that we have contributes in a negative fashion. But maybe things will change with the next regime. We may have to ask Putin for... Putin, can you clean up the air a little for us? Well, clean it up yourselves. I'm just a babbling guy tonight because we've got a lot to talk about. And let's start with Beltran getting to keep his job. What's that all about? Start with you, Marty.
Well, I mean... Beltran was obviously part of that 2017 Houston Astros business that everybody's talking about today. He was their regular DH that year. But, looking at the statistics, okay, he was 40 years old, but he only hit .231 that year. But he had to be somehow involved. You would think all the players had to know what was going on, and
he was said to be a leader in communicating the actual signals amongst the players.
Yeah, well, you said he's getting to keep his job. Has that been officially announced? I didn't see anything either way about that today.
Yeah, he was
Robert.
not named as far as possible sanctions and punishment. Manfred said at the beginning of all this, at the very beginning, that no players would be disciplined. If anyone got disciplined, it would be managers, general managers, owners, those in management. One of the key reasons for that is that if they disciplined players, and Beltran was a player, not a coach at that time, that would get the players' union involved. There's no
gotcha.
protection. There's no protection for manager, general manager, owner. Okay, there is for the players.
By definition.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, so that's one of the main reasons. Now, Alex Cora is probably going to get his tit in a ringer because he was the perpetrator and the instigator of two different schemes during those seasons of getting the signals and, setting the whole thing up. Not only that, the year that the Red Sox won the World Championship, 2018, he was their manager, and there's suspicions and accusations that the Red Sox were using things such as whistling and different things to signal the pitches in. So that's under investigation right now, and Manfred said that will be coming at a later but future date. So I would assume and expect that he would also get suspended. So
wow.
we'll have to see.
Memories of Sal Evars and Bobby Thompson.
Yes.
And come to find out, as an old Giant fan, they were doing illegal things, just like these guys are doing. It just on the field is fine, but off the field, Marty, you said it best in a blog this morning, in a comment. It's a skill.
Yeah, because right. Everybody's been doing that for years. Guys, stealing signals from second base, and because they can see the catch up, it's up to the catcher to change the signals and confuse people. That's been going on forever. But
spotting by chips, guys chip off their pitches and what have you. Bob Turley was said to have given Mickey Mantle like 10 home runs a year. Mantle credits him with that. Turley would just signal him from the bench what was coming. He had a knack of stealing signs.
Well,
but
that was considered an art. Okay,
right.
Stealing signs, from the bench or being a base runner. But now what's happening is, now that they have replay booths in all the stadiums and all the locker rooms, so the analytics guys can keep an eye on things, and they can replay whether or not they should challenge a call or not. So these guys are seeing things that the coaches and managers don't see from the dugout, and the players don't see, and you can signal things in. I mean, sometimes the television cameras show you the catcher signs,
right.
And as they're panning around. So,
exactly.
That's the problem, and Manfred several different times over the course of the last couple of years has said, do not do it. Okay, though that you get caught, okay, I'm going to come down hard on you, and that's what's happened. The manager and the general manager of the Astros not only got suspended, but they also got fired.
Right. They weren't fired by baseball; they were fired by their team.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, they can't be fired. They can't be fired by baseball. They can be suspended by baseball, for life even, but they can't be fired. But they were suspended each for a year, and then the Astros turned around and fired them.
Well, I saw one speculation that if they come down on Cora, it's going to be very hard. I mean, like lifetime suspension, somebody said. Somebody speculated.
Yeah, what they were talking about on MLB this afternoon, I was watching that they're thinking that Cora is going to be hammered much worse than Hinch was. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. Woo, that was a shocker, I have to say. And I have to.
One thing, Ralph, I just checked one thing before we came on the air. Altuve hit 346 that year in 2017. Next year he hit 316, and last year he hit 298. So, 30-point drop-off from 17 to 18. Maybe they weren't doing that again in 18. But had to help. When the Rays played the Astros in the playoffs this year, the Astros won the first two games. The Rays won the next two games at home. And then in the third game, Tyler Glasnow said after the game, I must have been tipping my pitchers. They knew every pitch I was throwing. And so it may have, been put into play again in the postseason. I don't know. But certainly something was going on.
Yeah.
And just getting back to the Beltran thing again, what's happening, on the internet and all, a lot of the Mets fans who did not want Beltran to be named manager in the first place started smacking their lips that, oh boy, he's going to get suspended too. We'll get rid of him this way. It's not going to happen. Now they're calling on the Mets to get rid of him because he shouldn't be the face of the franchise. It all depends how you feel, but...
No, Will Ponce's the face of the franchise. The schemer. Well. I mean, they're worried about stealing a few signs now. Well, oh boy, Met fans they're coming down on that franchise. They stole a few. And speaking of which, now they worry. There was an article that you posted, Robert, about the '86 Mets. Yes. Today, and it was like reading a book. This was a long article that I read through now I've studied all this stuff, been a Met fan, all this, read Perlman's books, but this article puts into perspective the culture of the team beyond guys like Gooden, Strawberry, and Mitchell, and even past '86. And Marty and I were talking off the air before. It was a cocaine-driven society in those days, especially with athletes and people of means and what have you. But even with that, Robert, were you not absolutely taken aback by that article?
It rekindled memories, Ralph, because I remember when it happened for an entire month. That's all you read in the Post and the Daily News and the New York Times was, about this and the Mets players being suspected of rape and this whole 9 yards, and then suddenly it just ended, and there was no more talk about it. And
all of us, in this article, it was written through the eyes of the rapees,
yes.
The woman and it was unbelievable from that standpoint. I don't think that ever came out before. It's can't be embarrassed. They played good ball. You're a fan, but as humans.
Yeah, well, like Bob Ojeda said in the article, he said, we were a great team, but we were totally out of control. And that's pretty what sums it up. I mean, you, Marty, and I talked a couple of weeks ago briefly about, the plane trip home after they clinched against the Astros and they tore the plane up. And this article again went over that again.
But with much more detail than I'd ever heard.
And it included their wives too.
Right, exactly. Degrading their wives and trading off on their wives or whatever they were doing, which again, I'm not being judgmental, but exactly. And some guy said that there were all kinds of physical abuses towards stewardesses that either were covered up in lawsuits or settled or what have you. And that was just one day. That was Tuesday. Okay. We're right about that. What?
Yep.
Pardon
but
me?
That was 86. The alleged rape was in 1990, I believe.
Right, with with Gooden and Darrell Boston. See, those were things that I never really followed that closely. I thought, Vince Coleman, right, exactly. The guy who throws a firecracker at kids going out of the parking lot.
Not just a firecracker. It was a cherry bomb or ash can. One of the big boys.
Right, at your fans. That's going to make a big impression. You'll be remembered you'll be invited to very many reunions things, and you can plug your book. I'm sure that'll happen, right? But it was, again, a remembrance of we're cheering for these people based on their athletic skills on the field, which is, and we lose sight of that, who we, as a society, who we have as our heroes, who we think what greatness is. We've all come to find out about Lenny Dykstra as an example. Some of them have good hearts, I will say, and that they abuse drugs didn't make them bad people. I'll give you an example. Dwight Gooden is a good guy. Darryl Strawberry is not a good guy. And Gooden has a definite problem, and it'll probably end up, I don't want to say probably, definitely contribute to his demise someday, because he's really hurting. But that doesn't mean he's not a good guy and he doesn't have a good heart. I wouldn't say the same for Darryl. I wouldn't say the same for Kevin Mitchell. I wouldn't say the same for Ray Knight. I wouldn't say the same for a lot of these guys who I have autographs of and pictures on my wall and baseball cards on my wall. I feel like a schmuck.
You could root for them, but I don't think Marty would want his daughters to date any of them, would you, Marty?
No.
No, I don't think so. No.
I wouldn't want an ex-wife of mine to date any of those people. And that's saying something.
But, it also, you think back, it's also saying something about our society back then. And, the way they covered it up, guys like Mike Lupica, covering that up and making jokes about it. And other big-time writers, everything was kept hush-hush. None of this came out. And it also started, problems between regular writers and, the baseball beat writers, because the baseball beat writers try to keep things quiet, and the editorial writers and stuff were writing about the rape case and, that type of stuff. and caused a lot of friction between the fellow writers on the different papers.
Well, I was out here, and in those days, we didn't have access to the internet, obviously, and just getting started, but none of instantaneous news. So I didn't get to keep up with it, either fortunately or unfortunately, as the case may be. Knowledge is power, but knowing is the booby prize. So it's all shocking me.
That, right, Marty? That during that period of time.
Yeah. Well. I remember that period of time very well. Yeah. I have to say that one guy that did get it together and was involved, and they don't talk about it much, is Keith Hernandez.
Right.
He's on TV all the time, and he was definitely involved with that stuff. But,
he was a big cokehead.
Back when he was with St. Louis, I didn't know or even paid attention to his coke habits or anyone else's really. With the Mets, I may be learning something. Did he bring it with him, or was it behind him in St. Louis?
As far as I know, it was a St. Louis thing. I don't believe anything was written about him in New York about it.
Right.
I don't know if maybe Marty heard something different. I don't know.
I just automatically think that he was involved with it in New York as well, because it's what was going on then. It was everywhere. You couldn't avoid it. It was done in public, in the clubs in Manhattan. It was like you couldn't avoid it. Unbelievable. So
well, they said Tim Raines started sliding head first because he didn't want to break the coke vial in his back pocket.
That is very funny. But I was just going to say, not out of the realm of possibility for sure.
There's a great book. I can't remember the title. I can get it for you guys if you want to read it. It's about the Pittsburgh Pirates, because they had a big coke culture for several years. And it was written by the guy who was supplying them their coke during those couple of seasons. And it was quite interesting. Yogi Berra's son, Dale, was very heavily involved in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Dave Parker, a whole bunch of them, very heavily involved in coke. So, Marty's right. That was the time, and it was being done by probably every team in baseball, to some degree or another.
Anybody that had the money for it, because it was not cheap. There was no nickel bags like there used to be with pot.
Right.
That stuff was expensive. You had to have money to get into that kind of a habit. You really.
Yep.
And those guys had money. So.
Yeah.
And thank God I didn't, because my drug of choice was pot, and I could not have afforded any of that. And it turns out it was 80 times more harmful than weed. And that's just the luck of the draw. It has been incredibly medicinal, but I didn't start out saying, well, let me take some medicine here. I just
no.
Pass the medicine, please. No. Here, medicine. No, I wanted a buzz. I just was lucky enough to be in touch with my body and realize that this is not hurting me. I knew it early on, and if it wasn't hurting me, let me do more that isn't hurting me. That was my good fortune at the expense, and the one or two times I tried it, it was no more of a high than good weed, and with a chemical feeling that I never adjusted to.
Good, and that's good.
Yeah. Yes, it is good. And next week we'll be talking about magic mushrooms and Ralphie and so fuck the meds. We're going to talk drugs. No, that's not it. But no, young man, don't stop talking that way.
Hey, spring training's only a month away, guys.
Thank God. It's already been a long winter away from just the daily game.
Yeah.
And the rhythm of 6 times a week, you're going to get some competition and something to think about and talk about. And it's going to be great. So we can consider this show a little hot stove, and I'll apologize in advance for my language, or actually, but I'm okay with it, you know? And I'll accept my apology right now. In the same breath, I'll accept my apology.
There you go.
And you kids out there, don't talk this way. Remember what Dizzy Dean once said to the teacher that admonished him for using improper grammar on the air. He said, I don't remember what the exact words were, but teachers don't make as much money or something like this.
Yeah.
I ain't talking about that or whatever. I do apologize sincerely and mean it too. Sincerely. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, the two Met Mavens are here, Robert Cole and Marty Rose. And I get to talk to Marty Rose during the week on Facebook about the Devlin sisters in PS 148. So my life, how bad is my life? Pretty damn good. Thank you, guys.
First grade teachers, huh?
Oh, first grade. We've come a long way in our dotage. We can still remember our first grade teachers, and that's a biggie. Okay, guys, thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Like I say, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tyko, the weak link of it all. Adios, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.